Hi, everybody. It's your host, K Did. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. I know it has been forever. We haven't seen you since December. Technically, you haven't heard me since December, but I hope you listened to all the episodes and catch yourself up on what we had provided for you in the previous season. As you might see, this is season two. I'm so happy that we got here this far, and I hope you like what we have in store for you. So we have a special guest. All my guests are special, but this guest is really doing a lot for the homeless community, and I hope you love his story. I hope you like this episode, and follow us on Twitter. Everything will be in the description box. Follow us on Instagram if you want to follow me at Kata Davis on Instagram, and also our person who's going to speak. He'll tell you more about his what you can follow him also because he's doing so much good work in New York City and around. So I'm gonna introduce you to Shem. How are you doing today?
How's everything? I'm good. I'm
I'm
good to
good.
be here with you.
Yes. So we're gonna get a little bit about how everything first started for you with the homeless shelter system in New York City. If you don't mind us telling us that story.
Well, obviously, the story could be quite extensive, but to make it real simple, I'm a product of the foster care system since the age of 2. Started experiencing homelessness at the age of 10 and was permanently discharged into the streets at the age of 12. So I've known homelessness well from being a child. That was
Hold up. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Already it started off kind of like bam, bam. I honestly don't know your story. So you're telling me this, and I'm like, what? I do foster care. I'm a foster parent. So I hear a lot of
Wow.
stories about foster kids, which I think is ridiculous as it is. But you was in this, as you said, the age of 2. You said they
Yeah.
discharged you at the age of 12. Are they allowed to do that?
Yeah. Well, of course they're not allowed to do it, but I was in a group home at the time, and I was how you say always AWOL, right? The conditions. I grew up in foster care, but when I was in the group home, that adjustment period was like a lot. And my brother and I, we were like real young. We really shouldn't have been in a group home, but they didn't have a choice. It was the lesser of two evils. The other one being putting us in an orphanage. So we ended up there, and I started going AWOL and stuff like that. And there was a process every time to get back in. So like I said, around 12, I returned like normal, and they were like, "You've been discharged. You can't come back no more." And I'm like, "Where am I go?" And they just said, "Go back to where you came from." And they was assuming that I was able to go to my mother's house, which was not facts. And so I was that at that point I was, there was no safety net. There was no going back or anything like that.
I don't like to hear things like that because the system has failed you since a child. That's what it seems like. A person
Yeah.
under 18, they cannot take care of themselves. I'm not saying they can't be. If you're a celebrity, you have like, Macaulay Culkin, he had money, he could take care of himself and not be with his parents. But a child who's already under the system, that's the state's job. That's the state's job to take care of that child. And they have definitely failed you. And it's very sad that that could even happen. I don't care if you're 12, you're coming back. No, take that child back in and you lead them to where they need to go. They should not be out on the street. It's just the system is just so messed up, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. But I'm
Well,
sorry to continue.
well, that's one of the things that fuels a lot of what I do today. Because it's like I understand the trauma of homelessness. I also understand the trauma of being at the mercy of the system and the system failing you. So I think about not just me as an adult experiencing homelessness or other adults experience. I think about those thousands of young people that are experiencing homelessness or that are in foster care, and many of us age out of foster care. Mine was a little earlier, but a lot of us age out of foster care 18, 21, and we're still left with the same lack of resources to stabilize us, and we end up experiencing homelessness or doing things just for survival's sake. And so that's a very real thing that I know well, because some people, they see me now and they think this is just a today thing in terms of my homeless experience, but it's really, or here's the other thing. Some people think that, oh, he's homeless because, he was a alcoholic or he was mentally ill.
Right. That's what they always
It's
think.
like, yeah, no, that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
It has to do with this system, the way things are really failing me. They failed me as a child, and
Right.
I don't go into my whole story, but they failed me as an adult.
Right.
When a simple clerical error had me paying child support for a son that I take care of, that I raised.
It's
This
so
is their
many
fault. This
stories
is
like
not my
that.
fault. And
Right.
I only entered a shelter to convince, because I tried, it was a 10-year process. I tried so many different things to get them to stop that order and correct themselves, and they never did it. And so my reason for entering a shelter was to be able to show, you're paying for him and me. So obviously he's in my custody.
Right.
And this was my slick way of trying to show them. So when I go back to court, so that process took 2 years. And what I didn't realize for a lot of people, but this was my reality as well, is when you enter the shelter, it's almost impossible to get out of that cycle of homelessness.
It's
And so
true.
I had my son, I raised him in a family shelter system throughout his junior high school years and his high school years, and watched him graduate from high school while we were still in the shelter system.
That's crazy. And that's really, I don't know. It's a lot. It really is a lot, to be honest. Tell me, did you go through PATH, I would assume? Because it's been a while. So I don't know if.
Yeah, I went through PATH. I went through the normal channels, but when I did it, the only difference was that there were not a lot of resources for Black, well, I don't want to say Black, for male fathers.
Oh, really?
So when I was going, that was one of the problems, is like a lot of times they didn't believe, I've been told, like, I don't believe that the mother, why would a mother leave her child with the father? It's like,
Right.
what? And why would you even do it? Because it's my son. It's like, it's not about the mother.
Exactly.
The mother can't handle it. I got it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, and then there was a thing of, well, you have to prove that he's in your custody. How? What do you mean? He's with me? No, you got to get a court. Did the court give him to you? I'm like, so when I go to court, the judge is saying, I will never do that. And I'm like, huh? And the judge is saying, because the mother doesn't have to do that. Why you and the mother have the exact same rights?
Right.
It's
Exactly.
a question of who's the custodial parent, but you don't have to go to court to prove that you're the custodial parent.
Right.
So you go back to them and let them know, no, you don't have to do that. And I never complied with that, because it was a violation of my right as a father. And so these are the trauma and the trials that I went through trying to get this thing taken care of. But it cost me a lot, because it was like, even then, my son, he aged out, and they wanted us to walk into a how do you say
Men's shelter?
adult shelter,
Adult shelter. Okay.
which I was like, nah, never that, not with my son. And so I had to spend time helping to stabilize him. But in that process, a lot of times, not to impose on people now, as to, me being an adult,
Right.
grown adult, and then I got my young adult son with me. So it's different when he was a child.
Right.
But now to impose on people is a little more difficult.
It seems like two men, not, it seems like that.
Yeah.
Because he's over 18, but still he's a child. Your child is a child no matter what. They could be 50. If you're still alive, that's still going to be a kid. You want to do the best for them,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And it's my responsibility, no matter what. I'm raising them,
right.
So those type of trials kind of made it difficult for me as a single adult dealing with homelessness. But, we had to, we've overcome it. But that's where I found myself in the adult shelter system. Got
it. So going back to PATH, I like to always start from like the beginning. Like, You told me about your foster care, how you got into it, but when you went to PATH, what made you decide to go to PATH? Because before this, I would assume that you was with, because he said you went to, well, your son was in junior high school. So there's a lot of time kind of span in the middle of that. So how
The
did
only
you
reason why I went to PATH
Yes.
was to get stop taking the child support from me.
Okay.
It's the only reason why I had to go to PATH, because I'm a single parent, and that's the family shelter. But I went because every other avenue I turned to, including leaving the state, he's always popping up on his mother's case. And no matter what, I went to fraud, I went all over the place. I would, I had to leave the state to get him removed from the case. So in other words, you can't have two PA cases, period.
That's true.
So when I left the state, I had HRA in another state threatened to sue New York City if they didn't remove her from her case. That was the only way. So when I came back to New York, I have other children. So I came back to engage my other children. When I returned to New York, I said, I have to take care of this child support because it makes it different. I was still paying the child support for my son, and then I still had to take care of my son. But the negative part is things like when you're trying to get medical and stuff like that. I couldn't do that when during this process. So I thought about, well, what if you go in the shelter? If you go in the shelter, they'll be forced to acknowledge that he's with you. Because the first time I tried it, it didn't work. This time I went to ACS. I don't never really tell these stories, but I went to ACS and I told them, yo, listen, I want to make a report. They like, what you want to report? I said, I want to make a report against DHS. I said, in the city of New York. It's like, what? I said, yo. Yeah. So the guy there's like, wait. He said, look, first of all, we're gonna keep this off the record. He said, so you sound crazy. I said, yo, they're not doing their job.
It's on record now.
Yeah. So he said, what he did was he wrote a letter.
Right.
And his letter basically was saying to DHS, give this man, let him in the shelter. So this time they let me in, and I ended up going past the 10-day stay, because that was what was happening before. For months, we'd be every 10 days, ineligible. And we like, damn, that was like the favorite word.
Yeah.
Once we walk in, we see the letter on the floor. We like, oh, shit. We got to the point we didn't buy nothing. We just kept our stuff packed because we knew we were gonna be sent somewhere else. And think about a child that's in school, or I think he was going to like his first grade, second grade, something like that. Think about a child having to switch school every 10 days or switch boroughs. It was crazy.
It is.
So sometimes, like for the school session, I would have to go somewhere else to stabilize them and then come back in the summertime. And the whole thing was I was trying to stop them from continuing to take the child support that they wasn't supposed to take.
Right.
And so, finally we ended up in there, and I waited, I think 6 months. And now there's no denying. Well, and even when I sat before the judge, he's like, well, how do you know? I said, listen, and the HRA is there. So they're working on behalf of the mother who's collecting the benefits, but don't have custody and hasn't seen my son.
Right.
And so she's like, yo, she's like, well, we don't even see the mother. And there's problems with the paperwork. So I said, I know there's problems with the paperwork. She cannot produce one doctor's note, one school record, one immunization, none of that. So what's going on? So the judge is looking, what? And here's the irony of the story. And I'm gonna end this part here. The reason why they did this, it was a clerical error from the court clerk. I was told, because I was pursuing custody of my two daughters from the same mother. I'm following what the judge says, who says you have to open up a PA case.
Yeah.
Did it because you need a source of income. Yeah. In the music business, I made quite a few dollars, so I was sitting on some money, which I didn't really need the money. But she said you need to have a source of income.
That's true.
I followed her procedures, and as a condition, you have to apply for child support.
Right.
I applied for the child support, but just to show you how it goes for Black men, instead of listing me as the petitioner, they listed me as the respondent. And that's how the mother was able to get it. And she never did the responsible thing and let them know that he's not with me. She just kept the money.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is just repeated failures. I'm like, yo,
right.
what? So now I speak from what I call trauma-informed activism. I am so traumatized.
Right.
I can't stop. I can't stop until I tear the damn thing down.
Right. You can't stop because it's like after one thing, after the next thing, after the next. It's like you literally are living these experiences just to make sure you can make something better for somebody else who's coming up behind you, which I think is a good, good thing. It might have been hard when it was happening, but definitely I know from everything that you have done and the changes you have put in and helped, which the changes honestly with shelter systems are very, very slow, but it does happen. I know people are behind you and very grateful for it because of what you had to go through and fight for. People are gonna have better lives, They're not gonna have to go through as much, even though it's not the best, but it's better than what it was, So I think it's honorable. It definitely is. So your time in the shelter, how was that for you? And how was that like, did they help you to get things in? Because what do they do for you while you were there?
I was just being warehouse, like everybody else. I honestly was never really looking for housing. Okay. In that aspect, like I said, my original intent was to stop the child support. I was, I never had a problem working or anything like that, but because I got so destabilized, it became a different thing. Okay. So, this last hooray into the shelter system, it was during the pandemic that I was like, wait a minute, hold up, I got to do something.
Oh, this is recent. Yeah, I thought it was recent. Much further back for some reason.
No, this is, I've been on and off homeless for a long time, and the other thing is encountering the NYPD's, I think they call it the diversion unit, or it was the diversion program. And that experience of encountering officers, being placed in a jail cell, handcuffs, and then taken to a shelter and told if I don't stay there, then I'm going to get a ticket. That was traumatizing. And so now I'm stuck in a place that I don't want to be in. I prefer the streets. And I'm stuck now. And I'm like, yo, this is just not working out. And then the pandemic comes a few months later, and it was horrible for us because, it was just horrible because we were in extreme danger during that time. And I say that because when you look at the mortality rate, people that were in the shelters where the mortality rate, they had a 67% higher mortality rate than the entire population in New York City.
I would think so.
Yeah, so think about it. And this is the height of the pandemic. Right. That was the level of danger that we faced in the shelter. So if everybody else was unsafe, because you've seen those refrigerated trucks, right? Can you imagine how unsafe we were? So I started advocating first for the food, because the food was always been horrible.
Oh my God. Horrible is an understatement. Horrible would have been nice to get. It was worse than horrible. Oh my God.
So I started behind the scenes speaking on that. But I developed the name The Homeless Hero because I wasn't talking for me. I was talking for other people. And I wanted to get something that we all could identify with. And I think, like the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, we all on a journey in this homeless experience. And so I wanted something that could represent all of us on the journey and not just Shams. And so that's where the name The Homeless Hero comes from. But I was writing as the homeless hero also to prevent myself from being retaliated against. And yeah. And so that was like the original activism. It was like, this food is nasty, we got to change it. And then it was like, we're in a dangerous environment. we have to be safe. Like, we don't have hand sanitizer, we don't have nothing. Like,
Oh,
we just stuck
really? In the pandemic? I'm so
during
confused.
the pandemic. We
So
didn't have.
they
They wouldn't put
wow.
soap. I never seen hand sanitizer. And then remember, everything shut down. So the idea, it's not just, it's not just like a bad thing from the shelter provider, but it was just the fact now we're in this pandemic, we're stuck in this place, and it's like no supplies are coming through. So it was extremely difficult.
Yes, guys. I hope you like the conversation thus far. We have so many other parts to this, and I hope you enjoy what we have upcoming for you this year. We want to do bigger and better things coming out on this podcast. If you have any ideas or you have any requests or any questions, you can definitely DM me on our different platforms. And the information down below will be there for you to get in your earliest convenience. Thank you for supporting the channel. Hopefully you can also share out our page to different people so different people can hear the stories of the people who are usually unnamed and unwanted in most times. Talk to you guys later.